Good evening, everyone. My name is William Iannuzzi. I'm President of the Board of Education, and I would like to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Iannuzzi,
Here.
Ms. Barrios Brooks,
Here.
Ms. Bavosa,
Present.
Ms. Castellano Minaya, Ms. Lewis, Ms. Ross,
Present.
Mr. Vega,
Here.
Ms. Williams. A quorum is present.
Colleagues, can I get a motion and a second to go immediately into executive session to discuss the employment history of particular persons?
So move, Bavosa.
Second, Brooks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will reconvene the public session of the meeting around 7 o'clock.
Now it's on.
So I should turn it. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is William Iannuzzi. I'm president of the Board of Education. We have a couple of things we just have to vote on really quickly, and then we will dive deep into the conversations. And our wonderful students are here, so we'll be able to see you guys perform in a little bit. Colleagues, can I get a motion in a second to reconvene the public session of the meeting?
So move, Bavosa.
Second, Ross.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Can everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I think the Columbus kids have been the loudest so far this year. um, Next up on the agenda is Board of Education announcements. Do any of my colleagues have any announcements they would like to make? Oh.
Good evening, New Rochelle. I would just like to congratulate our New Rochelle High School girls varsity team for advancing to the Class AAA final, and to our New Rochelle High School boys varsity team as it advances to the championship game. Go New Rochelle!
Quickly, I just wanted to say how wonderful it was to come to the Boys and Girls Club right here 2 Saturdays ago and witness the amazing Saturday deep dive. There was a yoga class for parents of our students here. There was a Google class for families. Our students were cooking and doing food science. There was a basketball clinic going on. It was so wonderful to spend my Saturday here with the Columbus families, and I was very grateful for our district staff, for especially Roshan Bochwani and Eddie Castro for leading this amazing work to partner with our families. Thank you.
Do any other of my colleagues have any announcements? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is our superintendent's update. I'll throw it over to you, Dr. Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody at home. Through the Board of Education President, good evening to the Board Trustees, and to the community in general. At Barnard, earlier this month, and some of us might have gone there, I think I heard that in the audience, they were guided by a visiting artist by the name of Cliff Mendelson, and he's famous for creating the book A Day in Clay. First grade students at Henry Barnard School recently dove into an exploration of African mask making and design in celebration of Black History Month. They learned about the styles and techniques of African culture and the various symbols, patterns, and imagery associated with this tradition. They then went on to create their own traditional African-inspired masks. Mr. Mendelson noted that the students really rose to the occasion and made some impressive pieces. Earlier this month, George M. Davis Jr. Elementary School hosted 2 packed performances of Seussical Jr. This year's performances included 2 separate casts totaling more than 110 third, fourth, and fifth grade students. The energetic performances kept the audiences on the edge of their seats. Students had the chance to shine in front of families, friends, and peers. The Davis PTA sponsored the musical, which offered an opportunity for every interested child to participate. With just 3 seconds to spare, 9 fourth grade students at Trinity's Math Enrichment Program burst out of the hour to exit escape room. Their success coming from a combination of keen deductions, seamless collaborative teamwork, and analytical thinking. The Escape from the Room adventure was part of their 2-month-long weekly math enrichment program and was designed to help the students make connections between abstract math concepts and real-life problem solving. Mr. Michael Selvaggi, Trinity's math academic intervention and enrichment teacher, organized the escape room visit. The students had to elude the illusionist, figuring out how to get through 2 rooms with what appeared to be random clues and make, all within 60 minutes, the deductions necessary to get out of those rooms. Importantly, they gained experience in the concept of collaborative problem solving and the value of careful observation. The escape room triumph was followed by a debriefing session with the class now able to look at problems with a deeper insight and ask, what are they actually focusing on and looking for in this problem? This month also, at Ward School, the first grade Rocket Readers team participated in the annual first grade Reading Bowl, kicking it off with a training round and a pep rally that included a read aloud and a cheer session. The Reading Bowl is a long-standing tradition at Ward. Throughout that week, students read diligently to earn points for the Reading Bowl, and some students reached their goal of 200 points, which were charted on the board outside the classroom, showing each student's total. At Albert Leonard Middle School, 8 Albert Leonard students teamed up to compete in the first LEGO League Mid-Hudson Qualifier Tournament held at the Mildred E. Strang Middle School in Yorktown Heights. The team I'm going to recollect myself. The team competed against 14 middle school teams from around the region. The students are members of 2 Albert Leonard Middle School LEGO Robotics clubs, which drew about 40 students to after-school sessions on Tuesdays and Wednesdays with technology teachers and LEGO coaches Walter Grosvenor and Stephen G. May. In the competition, teams of up to 10 students built and coded LEGO robots that navigated the missions of the robotic game. The teams also participate in an innovative project to identify and solve real, relevant world problems. The Albert Leonard Middle School team performed well enough to be placed in the middle of the pack. Talking about robotics and LEGO, we move to the New Rochelle High School robotics team. The New Row robotics team had a strong showing at the February Clash at Kennedy VRC Spin-Up event held at the JFK High School in Somers, New York. The B team, consisting of juniors Jasper Todd, Arismendi Escano, Jackson Denon, and Lior Atia, and sophomores Maxwell Smith, Scarlett Hartzman, Joseph Curtin, and Noah Rosenkrantz, ended the qualifying tournament in 2nd place. They won the design award for the engineering and construction of their robot and placed 7th in the skills ranking for the tournament. The team is ranked 22 in New York South. The rest of the teams, which were all new to the games this year, did well also. The D team, consisting of seniors Brian Garcia Valdez and Sebastian Diaz Ratis, and freshmen Nicholas Ensuncho and Max Strasberg, placed 10th in the tournament in the skills ranking. The skills ranking scores also put them at the 27th ranking for New York State South. The E team consisted of seniors Zachary White and Omar Reyes and freshmen Cesar Hernandez, David Diaz-Rios, Daniel Goncalves, Penelope Conway, Jacob Sandoval, and Amani Kura participated in their first ever tournament and attained 20th place for the skills ranking for the tournament. We're not just about actual sports, we're about academic sports as well. The A team, consisting of seniors Sensiel Johnson, Rebecca Prasad, Donovan Vernon, and Jelia Scrivens Tate, were chosen to participate in the round of 16 session. And I think I covered we also have the C team. The C team, consisting of seniors Mark Allen, Anthony Lopez, Jordan Partida, and sophomores Marisol Figueroa, Samuel Gall, and Valeria Bances Sanchez, placed 33rd out of 38 teams, are now looking forward to using their newfound engineering skills to propel them forward to their chosen careers. And finally, as mentioned earlier, our New Rochelle High School girls and boys basketball teams did nothing but stun the world last night. A huge congratulations to our boys and girls varsity teams. They both were victorious last night at the Class AAA semifinal in the Westchester County Center. The girls defeated Mamaroneck by a score of 51-35 to advance to the Section 1 championship game, and they will face Ketchum on Sunday at 12 p.m. The boys defeated Mamaroneck, again in overtime. Now, I have to tell you, for those of you who don't know, the girls' game went into halftime tied at 18 apiece. They went on to win. The boys' game went into halftime tied at 19 apiece. Then they had to go into overtime because the game ended in a tie. So that was one of the most exciting basketball games I've ever seen live, but one of the most exciting basketball games of this tournament. It was incredible. So the boys will face rivals Mount Vernon on Sunday at 2:15 p.m. at County Center. So please, if you can, join me at the County Center on Sunday. Again, game starts at 12 for the girls, 2:15 for the boys. And if you can't be there in person, at least wish them well tonight. And let's give them a big go Huguenots. And just some upcoming dates, please know in March, be reminded that elementary schools will have a half day of school on Tuesday, March 19th for parent-teacher conferences, and all schools will be closed from Monday, March 25th through Friday, March 29th for spring recess. Schools in the district will reopen on Monday, April 1st, and that is not a joke, okay? No April Fool's Day, school will be open. So with that, Mr. President, I have concluded my report, and I turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reynolds. Next up on our agenda is our discussion items, and our first one is the Columbus School presentation. So, Dr. Reynolds, you want to set the stage for us? Board members, if we can go sit in the front row, bring your microphones with you.
Heidi Lee here, enjoying a beautiful fall day in the central.
I'll get started. Sorry.
So I will tell you, when you have a youngster who's so eager to address a crowd, you know that you're doing the right thing. So this evening we're going to have and hear a presentation by this wonderful community school. It's led by a principal who gives with his heart on a daily basis. And I would like to not take any more time and wasting time and sharing with you all of the great things that you're going to hear, but I would like to bring to the microphone Mr. Michael Gallen, principal of Columbus Elementary School.
Well, good evening, and that was too kind. But Dr. Reynolds, Board President Iannuzzi, members of the Superintendent's Cabinet and the Board of Education, and amazing Columbus families and teachers, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Columbus. It's always an honor to host you. Especially now, I know that the rhythm of your board meetings is pretty intense and challenging, and we're just one stop in many. But when we receive you just once a year, it gives us a chance to pause and reflect and consider where we've been and think about the year ahead. With this in mind, we genuinely thank you, and this is really from the heart. We thank you all, board members and superintendents, for having the fortitude and devotion to stick with us over the last few difficult years. We genuinely appreciate your decent, professional, compassionate motivations. They're evident whenever we work with you, so thank you. So tonight, I will highlight a few items for your review. And first, as Black History Month concludes this evening, Miss Aisha Cook's fourth graders and Miss Carolyn Paradiso's fifth graders will bring alive the spirit, wisdom, and determination of civil rights warriors from New Rochelle's not too distant past. I'll then provide a snapshot of our present day school and move on to share an ongoing story of how we are reshaping our approach to the teaching of reading and spelling. And then finally, I will happily acknowledge two wonderful new tenure recipients. So over 60 years ago, 11 brave Black families in New Rochelle challenged the status quo and powerful political forces to bring a historic lawsuit against your predecessors, the people that took your chairs 60 years ago. Our students celebrated this local history earlier this month at New Rochelle High School, performing on stage for the annual WABC Black History program. And each year, I really do wish to acknowledge and thank WABC, because each year, WABC has demonstrated important curricular leadership that informs and guides our work with students. And this year's theme focused on Brown versus the Board of Education. And it provided the foundation for all Columbus classes to study local and national civil rights history. And so now, I invite the spirit of 1960s New Rochelle to re-enter Columbus as our students reenact one of the many boycotts of our schools. So please turn your attention to the stage and let your mind return to New Rochelle in 1959, 1960, and enjoy.
Heidi Lee here, enjoying a beautiful fall day in the center of New Rochelle and Lincoln Park, once the site of Lincoln Elementary School. It was the Lincoln parents that fought for several years the de facto segregation of New Rochelle School District. Not getting any satisfaction responses to their complaints, New Rochelle families staged protests, such as this one outside New Rochelle City Hall in 1960.
What do we want? Equal rights. When do we want them? Now. What do we want? Equal schools. When? Now. Separate and unequal? Equality, equality, equality.
We love our kids just like anyone else, and we want the best for them just like any other parent. Our kids have the right to a good education, just like the folks at Rochelle Park or Quaker Ridge. They must integrate these schools. We tried to get our kids into the new school, but we were told we didn't live in the district. It's not fair. They drew those street lines to exclude us. They had no intention of letting any of our kids attend to do with Daniel Webster. That's de facto segregation. De facto! De facto! De facto! That's right.
It's not a matter of liking or disliking. The school is falling apart and our children are not getting the same education as those at Mayflower and Daniel Webster. Why not? Lincoln is considered the Negro school and thus inferior. Our children are not inferior. We are not inferior. We deserve the best too. We must fight. Fight, fight, fight.
Separate and unequal. That's what we have here in diverse Queen City of the South, and we will not have it. No, we want equal schools. We want equal education. physical education and nothing less. Desegregate or else. Desegregate or else. Desegregate or else. Desegregate or else. Desegregate or else.
The parents finally brought a lawsuit against the Board of Education, the first northern city that shed an unwanted spotlight on what had been commonly known as a diverse city. The New Rochelle case was actually nicknamed Little Rock of the North. The parents' lawyer accused the school board of purposely making school districts segregated. Judge Kaufman agreed and declared that what have been arguing for many years that the New Rochelle School District was indeed de facto segregation. The decision was handed down on January 24, 1961. The school board was stunned by their defeat and continued to state defiantly that the neighborhood school policy was fair and not segregated by deciding on or purpose on not. They appealed the decisions 3 times and also lost those appeals all 3 times. Finally accepting their defeat, the school board decided to tear the building down, and they bused all Lincoln School students to all the neighborhood schools. It's been more than 63 years since that landmark decision. The site of the former school is now a location of Grow. Lincoln Park Community Garden is a legacy garden that teaches sustainable living and the history of Lincoln School. What a fitting end to hard-fought win by the courageous parents of Lincoln.
Ms. Cook, do they want to come out for a bow? Maybe. They're so polite. Oh. Oh, that's not good. Come on out, everyone. This is the 4th and 5th graders from Miss Paradiso's class and Miss Cook's class. Oh. Oh my God. I mean, all right, so this part isn't rehearsed, but you guys, when we were practicing a couple days ago and I said, I really have chills. We talked about the word historic and what you were honoring, and like history could be, you know, yesterday I brushed my teeth, that's history, but it's not really historic. You guys just gave so much beautiful energy to something that is powerfully historic. You didn't just make your families proud, you honored families from 60 years ago. Miss Cook, thank you, and Miss Paradiso, thank you. Oh, and just finally, because I think she just walked in, did Miss Tanner, Miss O'Tilly come to? Oh, and Miss O.T., thank you for putting this together for WABC and for us. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. And parents, I really am not sure what we want to do next. They're welcome to stay, or you're welcome to like take them home. It's like, we could have rehearsed that part, I'm sorry. We should have. I think they're going home. Oh, disculpe, padres. Creo que los niños van a estar como en la cafetería, y si quieren llevarlos, como mejor como ya noche. Pero muchísimas gracias por habernos prestado los niños. Y son excepcionales. So your children are really exceptional. You guys, thank you so much, parents, for bringing them. We really appreciate it. You're welcome to stay, but it's not going to be as good as that. So, you know, you can, yeah, I really have, I'll try, but it's not going to be anything close. No, I'm not done. I got a little bit more. I'm done in a second. I'll be close. Well, there's really no better way to honor the dreams of the past generations than to commit to high expectations. and to a full and equal education for each individual child, class by class, year after year. And with that in mind, and with this foundation in mind, I want to provide a quick overview of Columbus Now, and then give you a glimpse into an evolving narrative centered on our adjustments and remake of early reading instruction. Okay. Aseneth, you were so good. You guys were so good. Thank you guys so much. Okay. I'll just keep talking. It's all right. So this is us now. A quick glance at where we are right now. We continue to be a school that is largely filled with beautiful Black and brown families. We are a smaller school than we had been before the pandemic. I think Will knows and people in the neighborhood know that things really affected this neighborhood in ways that are more profound. You know, everyone was touched, and just it was exacerbated here. We used to have around 815 kids year to year to year to year to year, and people left. You know, living is high, it was tough to find work, and not everyone was able really to access the same supports during the pandemic, even that were offered. So we're a much smaller school than we have been ever, or not ever, of course, but since you know, I took over as principal. We continue to be a school that's majority Latino. Of the Latino population, the majority still are Mexican Americans, mostly from Jalisco and Michoacan. More and more in the last really 5-6 years, I can't even say a couple of years, but the last 5-6 years, we continue to receive many families from Honduras and Guatemala, more recently Venezuela and Peru, mixing in with the largely Mexican American community. One of the real highlights of whatever change happened during the pandemic, and I can't put my finger on it, is that we've been, the only lucky thing that's really happened is that more and more and more Black families have moved into the neighborhood. And, oh my God, I accidentally deleted the percentage, I apologize. 8? Good math, thank you. So that is really a high percentage from oh, you're reading from my thing, thank you. So really a nice thing. We're not a very diverse school, but thankfully more and more Black families are moving into the neighborhood, and we are thrilled to welcome and make our school a little bit more diverse. We continue to serve families, many of whom struggle economically for lots of different reasons and work extremely hard throughout their struggle. And as you can see, we have a very high proportion of English language learners, that's ELLs. That's the official number. It's probably not an undercount, but it doesn't really fully tell the story of the number of students that are continue to develop their English. And even if you pass out and become a commanding ELL student, you're still, you know, it takes 8-9 years for children, even if they sound beautiful in English, but to fully grasp and be able to perform to their capacity in a second language. So even that 236 is a high number, 36% or 35 is a high number. It actually underrepresents the challenges that still a lot of students face. We have 69 amazing teachers, and we have a lot of other amazing support staff. Okay. So tonight, after that, I want to just share a story, an ongoing story about what we've been doing really for a couple years. But the challenges of the pandemic made concerns about students' early learning more urgent. National and local news continue to report declines in student achievement and learning loss. And as such, beginning in earnest 2 years ago, we started to assess and change our approach to growing independent readers and writers. And this work, or tonight's quick overview of this work, is part of a literacy story, and it connects directly with our district's strategic roadmap and expectations. Our literacy journey here is in line with strategic direction student learning, most tightly connected with objectives A and B, literacy performance, and our ongoing work with our staff overlaps with strategic direction superb staff, objective D, which is about professional development and best practices. The chart on this slide represents the components of balanced literacy, an interwoven pedagogy for the teaching and learning of reading and writing. And really for more than a decade, elementary schools have used balanced literacy approaches in classrooms. And recently, I'm sure you've heard and I'm sure you've read, I think our generation's literacy wars, or reading wars, have been rekindled, mostly supported by advances in cognitive science. Balanced literacy has been positioned as the antithesis of the science of reading, a term used to capture systemic pedagogies that are now widely accepted to be most effective forms of explicit reading and spelling instruction, early reading instruction. And we decided to take the position of learners and reflective practitioners. And while I believe that the battle between balanced literacy and science of reading has been improperly portrayed as a binary, an either or, one against the other, we have made significant changes to how we approach balanced literacy and have incorporated and taken on promising instructional methods associated and driven by what is called the science of reading. So here's the short version of how it all went down, where we're headed, and what we're up to. So for many years, we noticed that many Columbus readers, while progressing, were reading close to mid-year and end-of-year benchmarks in reading. And this slide shows, and obviously the numbers you can't read, but it's an example of how in May, June of last year, it's a slice actually of our a third grade class and an end-of-year assessment where we, in one-on-one teacher interviews, kind of assess what level a reader's at F&P, Fountains and Pinnell levels. And something we've noticed for years and years is that a lot of our kids were just almost there. In fact, we had about, at the end of last year in third grade, about 2/3 of the kids reading at level and a third below level. But we had to go a little bit deeper than that, and we always have. So let's look at those 1/3. Why were these readers not catching up? What's holding them down? And these readers, from the slice of data when we looked at third grade, they equate to, 51 kids. But when we looked at the readers that were kind of within 8 months of the threshold of where you want third graders, it was just 27 kids. So just turn your attention for today to 27 kids. We knew that these readers struggled when they had to kind of bridge and cross significant thresholds at the ends of reading texts and where texts get more difficult. I mean, our lingo would be kind of second graders, we're expecting them to kind of move from LM books. And these are kind of, it's a band that becomes more complex when you get to NOP. And a lot of our kids kind of like paused there and traffic jammed up there. So we looked at these texts and we're thinking, well, they become more complex, they're more vocabulary heavy and dependent, and many of our kids are English language learners, and perhaps they just weren't able to match the subtlety or the complexity of the stories, the language, the vocabulary. In short, for many years, we thought that a large part of our problem was just a symptom that was natural, challenges that we faced as teachers at a school with a high L population. Yet as we learn more about the science of reading and look differently at our phonics methods and curricula, we began to question our assumptions about everything, but especially those 27 kids. Our phonics practices, teaching and learning, didn't mirror what we were learning about best practice, neither in our delivery of the work, students' work, or in our structure. And our phonics teaching wasn't consistent enough, class to class, grade to grade. And we were also aware of persistent issues with encoding or spelling across K-5. We needed to reset and drive toward more consistency and cohesion than we had ever been comfortable with before. And most impactful, our analysis and reflection led us to think differently about what was underneath, what was holding back those readers, or those 27. They were close, but they weren't making up enough ground year to year. Yep, the challenges of learning new languages are real, and they do influence reading comprehension, but as we adopted and incorporated more and more detailed phonics level data into our reflective work, our brains started to change. And we determined that the gaps in phonics, perhaps more than anything, were what were holding back those 27 kids. We needed to adjust, and we needed to do it significantly and immediately. So here's the beauty of being a teacher. You don't just get to, that's the beauty and the challenge of being a good teacher, I guess. You don't just get to buy something and open it up and make it work. There's really no perfect, full curriculum for the science of reading. And like all good research, the implications are complex, and they require knowledgeable teachers to engage in reflective practices and methods. And that's really just what we did. We adapted our work with the goal of making sure our instruction is informed by current research and informed by the science. So this is how we've rebalanced. We've grounded K2 instruction in explicit ordered phonics and related skills. We've increased our focus and understanding of phonics teaching and learning. We incorporated more and frequent phonics assessments alongside other reading assessments. And this has been perhaps the most drastic change, in that we've actually fully stopped some assessments that we had done in kindergarten and first grade for many, many years. And perhaps this only makes sense to a slice of the people in this room, but we've kind of thoroughly changed what books are sitting in kindergarten and first graders' book bags. Now our kids' bags are filled almost entirely with decodable texts, and their independent reading is much more with phonetically regular or decodable early readers. And our focus of reading interventions with K1, 2, 3, 4 actually are all now connected more to science of reading and phonics and a phonetic awareness, phonological awareness deficits. So our work was informed, and I know she doesn't want me to thank her, but the person who's in charge of C&I, curriculum instruction, who might be in this room, she doesn't want to be mentioned, and she's here though, and she's sitting right over there in a suit. We reached out to to somebody and who doesn't want to be named early last year, and just kind of put our soul out there and said, this is where we are, and we don't want to make some drastic moves we don't want to be out of line, we don't want to start anything that you're going to say, you know, that's not the district's plan. And with curriculum and instruction's blessing, we launched a study team, a phonics study team. And we reviewed 5 separate programs, invited representatives to impress us, and in the end we chose a program called 95% Phonics. We also purchased second grade intervention materials from this group, thanks to somebody's recommendation that we pilot that. And to support coherent phonics instruction, we created a not-to-be-disturbed mandatory 30-minute phonics block at all grade levels. And for K2 classes, our reading specialists now push in to classrooms during these 30 minutes to watch and keep all kids engaged. And finally, within the 95% program, 2 recurring assessments are used to guide teachers' work and provide our teams with data upon which we reflect. Benchmark data 3 times a year, and end-of-unit assessments that occur much more frequently. So if we return to that chart of what the many components of balanced literacy have been understood to be, perhaps the best way to represent our changes are with the expanded importance and then time that we devote to these bigger ovals. As I said, the war has often been represented as an either-or, a binary, or one right way versus the wrong way. And instead, our work and our study and our reflection have led us to accept big adjustments and rebalance an integrated approach to the teaching and learning of reading and writing, kindergarten through 5th grade. So now, to get super granular and thinking again, kid by kid by kid, because this is what we do. Each one of those rows is a kid. Each one of those rows is a reader, and of course, I deleted their names and their teachers' names. But now, our Google Sheets look like this. The phonics screener on the left side there is a central piece of how we talk about kids and think about kids and look at kids and what they need. So the phonics data that we gather from 95% is at the heart of a larger data set where each student's strengths and needs are reviewed in a more comprehensive approach. It feels really good to look at that Google Sheet right now, because we know that there was a lot behind that, and a lot of learning, and a lot of faith in change. So actually, we can end with some good news. The early results are encouraging. We completed mid-year literacy assessments because that's our job. All schools across, elementary schools across New Rochelle adhere to the same timeline of assessments and testing. And what we're seeing has lifted our hopes. The number of kids, kindergarten through 5th grade, who are reading and approaching phonics expectations at the end of phonics unit is really high. Now, this is different than reading levels, but end of phonics unit assessments, and we want that to be 95%, right? That's the 95% group. But it's really high, we're getting there. It's not 95%, but we're getting there. And what we believe will happen is that the skills that we're focusing on will translate into students' independent reading levels. Translate to move those 27 kids who are within 8 months of independent reading levels that are grade level, it'll move them towards the beginning of 4th grade on-level independent readers this year. So of course the story's ongoing. We continue to assess, reflect, adapt as we move forward, and there's no program and no system that works without devoted and talented teachers. And so with that in mind, it really is fitting and a good close to end tonight's presentation by acknowledging 2 of the newly tenured teachers who, in all their work, have been at the center of such change. So, a huge congratulations. That's your mom. I'm looking at her face. Huge congratulations to a wonderful kindergarten and 1st grade teacher, Miss Jessie Lanoyle. Jessie has taught 2nd grade and for the last 2 years looped as a kindergarten and 1st grade teacher with her same gaggle of happy students. And from the beginning, Jessie has devoted herself to professional study and collaboration. Jessie's been an important part of a first wave of primary teachers who were confident enough and dedicated enough to question our literacy practices. But in all subject areas, Jessie has intentionally created routines and spaces for exploration and explicit practice. But particularly for her kindergarten and 1st grade, Jessie's worked hard to create play within her classroom, play that is at once joyful but purposeful, allowing kids to develop lifelong verbal and social skills, but purposeful as well in that play supports Jessie's observation of the kids, details about their personalities and learning styles that she uses to plan writing and other activities. Jessie is a mother of 2 kids, they're right over there, and every time I watch her with her students, every time I watch her with her students, I'm struck by how earnestly and respectfully she treats the kids in her class and how she approaches their time with her. She treats her students as she prays every day that her own children are treated. It's natural for her as her disposition to she has a natural disposition to continually grow. But it's perhaps the core reason that we're so grateful that she's now a tenured Columbus teacher. So congratulations. We also celebrate this evening Deanna Lasko. So, 1st grade teacher, Deanna Lasko, represents the next generation of great teachers in her family. And I didn't know this until, 48 minutes ago, but the 6th generation? Was that for real? Oh my God. I thought it was the 3rd generation. I'll change it. So Deanna started as a kindergarten leave replacement. I don't even know where I am, but I'll read. But it was an incredible summer where they ripped up all the floors downstairs, and every kindergarten, 1st grade classroom was in boxes. and she had to move into a classroom that wasn't hers, boxes that she didn't pack, a school that only got opened when, the trucks left, late August. I don't know, it kind of was like, thank you. That's a big job. Anyone who knows elementary education, setting up a classroom, we can't really explain to people who are not elementary teachers. You're like, what's a big deal? Set up your classroom. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. So with that in mind, she did that in August with her mom who's sitting there. Thank you so much. And she taught and she did beautifully. And then, I think it was November, we had a surprise leave of absence in 3rd grade. I said, hey, you want to do this again? And she moved upstairs and she took over a classroom, and we really she only knows one way to do her job, which is you don't kind of have to do anything. And so she pulled everything out, and we kind of looked and were like, okay, this classroom was not ready. These kids were not set up for success. And thanks again to her mom, she did it again. She came in Christmas break. This is totally, I can't oversell what she did. And I was in there with her, and we were teaching together, and I will also say this for her mom's benefit as well. I thought I was pretty good, and I was this, fancy teacher that was modeling some stuff for her, and she was so polite and taking notes when I was teaching. And then I'd show up the next day, and she was doing it better than me. I've really never seen anyone learn so quickly and so fully. And that continues to be, I think, what drives us most to be impressed with Deanna. But the reason is because she comes front-loaded with these beliefs about constructivist education and play and experience-laden inquiry. So she comes front-loaded with a philosophy, and then anything's possible. She's so intelligent that she's able to interweave her core beliefs with very precise and explicit instruction. And she proved from day one that she already was a devoted teacher at heart. And every day since, she's just continued to grow and learn and improve in all ways. So Deanna has fully remade, now you will know, 3 classrooms in 5 years. I think it's really emotional too. And she's taught 4 different grade levels, even though she looped K1, so maybe that doesn't count. Her core approach, no matter where she is about listening to kids, reflecting and planning, and then implementing tailored instruction that translates to what those kids need. She's a responsive, kind teacher. She's a tremendous colleague and STEM leader. And she's now a tenured Columbus teacher, and we really, really congratulate you. So everyone, that's our literacy story and where we are at present, and I thank you for your attention and for all your support.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gallen. I'm going to open up the comments and questions for my colleagues, but I would actually like to go first. You're my neighbor.
I know.
This is my community. I live in this neighborhood. I'm your neighbor for 12 years next door. And even though I didn't go to Columbus, I feel like you guys have adopted me, so.
We have.
Yeah. But I just want to highlight the amount of progress over the last 5 years for this school. And I mean, 5 years ago, I was elected to the board. There was a dirt soccer field. There was crumbling playgrounds. This auditorium you're sitting in now was hard wooden chairs.
Yep.
And just the one-way street, two-way street, yeah. And so the progress that has been made to really make this a true community school.
Yeah.
And I think that we saw during the pandemic, like you mentioned, the struggles that our community faced and how the community centers in this neighborhood had to step up.
Yeah.
And now it's just the school and the Boys and Girls Club left with St. Joseph's closing. And now it highlights how more important now the community needs these infrastructures that we can offer them. And I mean, just looking at what you have done, especially with food inequality in the food pantries here at Columbus, and how every Wednesday the line gets longer and longer outside, and how your field now is one of the only green spaces that's safe for kids to go to, where neighbors aren't calling the cops on the kids just for playing soccer or volleyball. and how it was a struggle to open that gate and to make sure it was unlocked so the kids can use it without the cops being called on them. But I just want to congratulate you and your team and just highlight the progress that's been made for the kids in this community. And before I end and let my colleagues talk, I just also need to highlight that 2 years ago, last month, we lost someone across the street, a 16-year-old Julian Oliveros. And I always think about that and where I was when that happened and how this school, this community reacted to that and how the candle visual on the field and what more can be done. And just watching the kids do what they did with the Lincoln desegregation case just is a reminder to myself as a board member, but a community member, that there's just so much work that needs to be done for true equity, not just in the Lincoln attendance zone, but all across the district. So I want to thank you, thank your team, and thank you guys for everything you've done. Colleagues, any questions, comments?
Well, that means so much coming from you. Thank you very much.
I'll make this quick. I just wanted to say that nationally, phonics is a hot topic, and literacy and reading are hot topics. So it's just comforting to know that we're taking such a national hot topic and applying it locally, and that you have such trust in the admin here to be able to lean on them and say, hey, I see this, I know this, like, can I go to you for help? And their doors are always open to reciprocate that. So just a kudos to our team, a kudos to you and your team to be able to collaborate across the board and not just let national discussions pass us over, but to stop and think, does this apply to us? And then if yes, how do we fix it? So
thank you very much.
So similarly, I just wanted to thank you for geeking out with us a little and sharing the numbers and the spreadsheets and the approach. And as my colleague said, I really appreciate the willingness to look at the new science and the new data. I think there's sometimes a misconception that educators are like, I know how to do this. I've been teaching for X amount of years and there's nothing left to learn. And it's really just really great to know that educators in our district have amazing tools, but the science evolves and changes and the evidence changes, and with that our practices can evolve and change. And I just really appreciate both that approach and then just allowing us a real sneak peek into, I felt like I was on your desktop, like looking at the data and combing through it. And I think two things: that's a team effort that requires a team of people who are willing to unpack what you do and think about how to pack it back up in a different kind of way. And so really thank you to all the members, and congratulations to those who received tenure today, but also thank you to the leaders who are willing to take them on that journey. So thank you very much.
I really appreciate that you both brought that up, because it's, if the people that are charged with doing this don't have the disposition, well, one, you got to have the knowledge and the confidence in your own abilities, but these teachers who are represented here have the disposition to, I'm going to be better every year. And it sounds cliche, I guess, but if you walk through these hallways, like, it's very humbling to know that that's their honest disposition. They, doesn't matter who's standing in the front, like, they're going to try to be better every year. And that's why this has started to be successful. But thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. And I guess one of the things that I really enjoyed is Ms. Cook. I enjoyed the students performing and really sort of picking history that's relevant to your neighborhood, to the school. And as much as I always appreciate all the singing that we hear, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into this presentation by the students. I also, similar to my colleagues, is what I was really excited by was that you're trying something, that you are looking at the numbers. You're not just saying, oh, that's okay, but you're looking at sort of the sort of people that are right below and how can you actually kind of move them up, and are willing to try that. And I have to commend actually our district and our administrators for supporting that, because I feel like that's the way that we're actually going to learn and make progress and improve, just with things like literacy or anything within our district.
Anything.
And so I'm really excited by that, and just having the curiosity, the thoughtfulness to really push into that, and then the willingness to actually go on a limb and try something new. Like that's very brave, and I appreciate that you're doing that. You're taking the leadership to actually do that within the school. And then the other thing, which I've heard in a couple of presentations, I heard it in yours, I've heard in a couple of the other presentations that I've enjoyed hearing this year, is where we're not just taking the numbers, but we're actually looking below and going deeper and thinking about how are we actually going to push sort of those kids that are not meeting where the targets are, and how are we actually going to make a difference. And so I really appreciate that, and I'm excited to hear that within our district, is that we really are trying to make progress. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Good evening, Columbus School. The voice of children is often heard much more clearly and loudly than the voices that we spout ourselves. And tonight, when we heard about equality. Equality means that each and every child is presented with equal academic, social, and emotional supports. Kudos to Ms. Cook, Ms. Paradiso, and I believe you said Ms. OT, for highlighting children's voices to remind us of this historic event, which has really, at this point, circumvented much of what is taking place in our district. My first real experience with Columbus School was 2 Thanksgivings ago, when somebody put out, if anyone would like to help with the Thanksgiving drive. I came here, I've never seen so much food, so many parents, so much energy, so much enthusiasm, and I thought, this is what it means to feed our children. So congratulations on that. I never really got a chance to say anything, but to know that in a school where so many are needy themselves, that was not the concern. The concern was for those others to have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Mr. Galland, I'd like to thank you for your transparency regarding the research alignment. Go Phonics. I know my esteemed colleague said it's new. I went to first grade many, many years / decades ago, and I still remember my first grade teacher teaching me A-E-I-O-U. And so, go Phonics, because I think you have found the key to success, and I'm hoping to see continued progress with your students, which, based on what we saw tonight, is going to happen. And lastly, to the 2 teachers, Jessie Lanoyle and Deanna Lasco, who received tenure, God bless you. I was a middle school, mostly 8th grade teacher for decades, and I'll be honest with you, I have always said to my elementary teacher friends, God bless you, God bless you. I could never. And I credited myself with being pretty good in the classroom, but woo, give me those teenagers anytime, baby. And 6 generations of teachers. My background is a little staggered. I had all male, except for me. Uncle, father, this one, that one, Board of Regents, math teacher, English teacher. I taught math and English in this district. But mine didn't go vertically. Mine went sort of zigzag horizontally. 6 generations. God bless you. And my father and another teacher, who were really my mentors, said something to me that you actually highlighted tonight. And they said, I was worried about a situation with a child who was going through something pretty catastrophic, and both my father and this other teacher said to me, treat each child as if he or she were your own. At the time, I was 21 years old. What did I know? But I had that in my mind, and if we kept that premise, how wonderful would everything be? So thank you, Columbus. Thank you to the parents, to the students, to the teachers, to the administrators. This was really an uplifting night. I enjoyed this tremendously.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's always hard to go
Thanks for
after
the tie.
trustee Bavosa. We know that. Our storyteller and an educator and just like family figure of all New Rochelle, right? But I do want to share that whenever I'm at Columbus, I feel at home because Columbus is family and Columbus is love. And, you know, unlike some others in this room, this is the school that I know that my family needed and never got. If my brother with a learning disability had been in these classrooms, he would have actually finished his schooling and not be in a dead-end situation that he's in. If my mother and father had gotten to come to this school and not be told that they had to leave their language and their culture and identity outside of the school, they would be different people. And as a teacher, I try to heal the intergenerational trauma that I have, but when I'm here, I heal because you lead with love, and it's permeates through every single part of this school, whether it's giving out hats in the winter with the drive. I'll never forget doing that together with the staff here, giving out food, learning together, but you pour into your staff and you set the tone, Principal Gallen. You speak Spanish. Do you know what that means to have a principal who communicate with our immigrant families and our families who've been here for generations, but still have the gift of Spanish, another language, and you are a model. The fact that you're able to say that you stood in a classroom with a teacher, teaching together, what principal does that or makes the time to do that? You do, and you lead with love, and you're not afraid to say that word. And I just want you to know your genuine authenticity and the love that you have for this community comes through every step of the way. And I'm honored to be a part of this Columbus familia and this community, and I just hope the best for it. And I thank all the parents because this PTA is like no other, and it works so hard, the Mascara Women's Club, and there's just so much beauty in this family. So I'm gonna stop before I get more emotional than I already am, but thank you for the healing, and thank you for the opportunity. And it's not just about creating a warm place of belonging, it's elevating academics for all students, because it's not enough to just have kids be happy here. It's about making sure that they have the greatest access to literacy, to math, to enrichment, to every opportunity that any kid in any zip code deserves to have. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Principal Gallen, for showing us the importance of having a community school. And congratulations to all of the tenure recipients. I received a world-class education in the New Rochelle Public Schools. My family migrated from Virginia to New Rochelle in the late 1800s.
Oh my God.
And yes, and I would like to thank Ms. Aisha Cook for that presentation and also her colleagues. And also the strides that the families who advocate our children. And I really feel emotional at this time because literally I grew up 80 Winthrop Avenue across the street from Lincoln Park. So I was in that attendance zone. I remember being a child waiting for the bus, and there were many buses, there were hundreds of kids being bused all over New Rochelle. And I remember looking outside. I love my community. That was my family. And that was a place that I lived, and I had pride. People loved me. I loved them. But I remember being on the bus, and when we were approaching the school, I was saying, I wish I could walk to school. I was always thinking that. So it is important to have a community school. And also, it's important to listen to families when they're asking for something. And as a board member, and that's important to me because it really hurts my heart to think that families had to go through what they went through just for something for equality and basic human rights. And I'm really proud to be on this board because we really are a group of people who listen to the families, listen to the employees of the district, and make New Rochelle better and make the school district better. Thank you.
So I'd like to backwards map what we just experienced tonight. To Mr. Gallen, I want to start off with the presentation on data. I felt that there was a theme of accountability throughout what was shared tonight, right? So we talk about the data, we talk about how well our students are doing, and feeling like we can do more. That's us holding ourselves accountable to our profession, trying to get more from our students, finding a different way of bringing that experience of learning to our students and bringing our students to the learning. So I wanted to start there with that part of your presentation, and thank you for showing us the data that we can do more and do better. Then I want to go to the presentation that we experienced tonight. Again, accountability. Reminding us, as you stated so eloquently earlier today at a meeting, about things that are historical being very different from things that were history, right? So talking to us about our history, talking to us about what historically has been done to a region of our community, and keeping that fresh in our mind because those inequalities continue throughout these days, right? So holding us accountable through the voice of children, how well was that done? Now our children will be able to develop their voice. Oftentimes, we remember as children, as adults, the learning that we did when we had an experience in that learning, as opposed to it being delivered to us. We saw that this evening. The hope is that our children who are a part of this will grow up and hold us accountable so that we don't repeat our history, right? So that's an experience there that we can have hopefully in the future. And then I'm going to go back even further. So when I stood up and I said, I introduced you, and I said, here's a principal who leads his school with heart. There's a difference between the science of teaching and the art of teaching. The same with administration, the science of administration and the art of administration. Anyone can go to school to learn how to be a teacher, to learn how to be an administrator. But someone to have that art already in them, knowing that in order for your students to relate to learning, you have to have your school relate to your community and vice versa. That's not something you can teach. That's the art. And in that art is the heart that I was talking about with Mr. Gallen. So I want us to understand that that level of accountability is greater than just a profession. It's a calling. And Mr. Gallen tonight shows how that accountability is wrapped throughout everything that happens here in Columbus School. So I want to congratulate our teachers for now being a part of that team of accountability. I want to congratulate our students for making sure that we're accountable. To our teachers who are holding themselves accountable and giving those students voice, and to our administration for holding us accountable and making sure that we're responsible for the job in which we're entrusted. So thank you very much, Mr. Gallen.
Thank you so much.
And as we transition, and I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, as we are now going to learn a little bit more about our conversation related to the budget. So throughout our journey thus far, we understand that there are some very key factors as it relates to building a budget and making sure that we are fiscally solvent. We've decided that in our approach this year, we're going to break off pieces of our budget so that you can understand the whole picture, but understand it through a myopic view with each conversation. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we want us to understand, firstly, some things that we have no control over as it relates to building a budget, and then having the conversation about those items that we do have some control over as it relates to making sure that we have enough finances available for what it is that we need to do in order to continue down the path of excellence with our students. So this evening, we're going to take our next walk in that conversation. We're going to be led by our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Operations and Finance and all of that good stuff, Mr. Carlos Leal, and he's going to be joined by our Business Administrator, Ms. Joy Mike.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good evening. All right. So we'll just jump right in, if we may. Okay, fantastic. President Iannuzzi and board members, if we may, I just want to recap our journey. Again, we're focusing our whole budget development conversation around our guiding principles, the roadmap, our variables. And so this is a recap, again, of our previous presentations. But that being said, all of this is built around 5 specific priorities. The first is student outcomes. So as we're thinking about $1, a dime, 1,000, whatever the number, it's in service to our children. The second is maintaining all current staff and making every effort so that there are no layoffs. And then reduction of our discretionary spending. We talked about the last time where there are certain dollars that cannot be touched, i.e. we need to pay salaries, and you'll see a slide in a second that explains those things. But then what are the expenses that we can actually reduce? And then how do we leverage attrition and retirements in this equation? And then how do we stay within the allowable tax cap? All of these taken into consideration. So as a quick recap of our key variables, we did receive additional state aid, and I believe I mentioned this the last time. About 51% of the districts across the state actually got a reduction. We are one of the few districts that did get an increase. Yeah, very lucky for them. But I should add, not the total dollar amount that we should have received. That is still a continued journey. We have expiring ESSER grant dollars. Our liability and insurance rates continue to increase. I mentioned the last time we got together, we, Putnam County and Rockland County, all received news that our insurances are going up by at least 20%. Transportation and other contractual renewals also increase as it relates to contracts and CPI. Health insurance is also going up. So active employees is 9%, 10.5%, retirees from 18.4 to 24.9%, retirement system increases, and then maximum, again, talking about the maximum use of reserves to minimize taxpayer. Again, how do we take all these things into consideration in building a budget? So Joy will jump right in, talk a little bit more about the budget approach.
Good evening, and thank you for having me this evening. So in terms of the budget approach, we really did look at different ways to have cost savings going into 24-25. We provided budget allocations across the district based on enrollment to all of our school buildings. We also provided district-wide building and department discretionary spending that was reduced by 20%. And when we say discretionary spending, it's mostly in the area of supplies and materials and some contracts that we have some control over. In addition, the leadership team was asked to budget within the reduced allocations that they were provided. In terms of alignment, as a guidepost for us is aligning so that a strategic roadmap that has been developed and is in practice. All new staffing requests were evaluated and retirements evaluated to maximize student outcomes. Budget requests had to align to our strategic roadmap in order to be considered. The cabinet reviewed and approved of unbudgeted requests or requests that exceeded the allocations that we had for the budget. And in addition, our unbudgeted and facilities requests were prioritized by the district leadership. So on to our budget snapshot, I just wanted to give the community a sort of overview or review of our current year revenue and expenditures. Our current budget for this school year is $316,135,242. And so we must present a balanced budget to the community, which both revenue and expenditures. On the revenue side, you will see that property taxes makes up just over 70% of our revenue. And state aid, which we spoke briefly about foundation aid as a portion of state aid, is over 25% of our revenue. And we do have other revenues, but by far state aid and property taxes makes up the majority. On the expenditure side, you will note that if you look at our salary and benefits, so the section on the right, that's about 74% of our budget. Contracts and other expenses is only about 26%. So that's an important part of our conversation as we move forward, and that salary and benefits really does drive the budget that we have to put forward. So having that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Leal, who will give you some additional details.
Thank you, Joy. That's perfect. So we'll continue down that journey in terms of the budget snapshot. So, so tonight, what we really wanted to talk about was what are those non-negotiables for us? What are those fixed expenses? So knowing what those fixed expenses are will help us to determine what's left, and then what can we do with what's left? Because these pieces here are a must-have. So the first is those general supports. Excuse me. So in terms of general supports, these are the administrative costs associated with running the district. And the discretionary spending, again, in each of these slides, you'll see where everyone was asked to reduce 20%. And the consideration here was that there's an increase in the collective bargaining agreement contract, that we're, again, maintaining current staffing minus nutrition. The proposed budget reflects a shift in aligning to state budget standards. And what you'll notice on some of these categorical lines, you'll see a 3-digit function code. As we were preparing the budget itself, and I've talked about this before to the community, is we were realigning dollars so that things are categorized in the correct line, so that when we talk about what is our true spending for a particular activity or a particular location, we have it all compiled together. And of course, again, those are all aligned to state codes because each of those 3 codes are reportable items. So the dollars associated with that 3-digit number are what we report to the state when we begin to have a conversation around what dollars we'll receive in the subsequent year. So I'll just pull out a few of these, but the Board of Ed, for example, is the first one, which is function code 1010. You'll notice that the proposed budget is $50,000. It's $7,500 less, so it's a decrease of 13%. And you can go down these categorically, and you'll just notice in different areas where the percent is increased or it's decreased. And a lot of that is associated with the fact that, again, because we move something to its right place, a particular line decreased or increased. I'll give you another example. In 1240, that's the chief school administrator. There is a decrease of 31%. 0.8 is because someone was coded to that line, that should not have been in that line, and so now we put them in the appropriate place. So it's part of the cleaning up so that we have a true picture moving forward. So these are our general support dollars. It includes legal, human resources, records management, public information. The second is general support services and technology. Again, a comprehensive look, 20%, and remaining, again, current staffing. Those are the themes throughout. Then this particular item here has an overall increase of 17.9%. And if you look at, and I'll pull out one specific one, if you look in the halfway down the page at unallocated insurance, 1910, we've spoken about that all of our insurance premiums can continue to go up. I'm sure you're experiencing that at home as well. We're feeling that effect, and so those dollars are the additional dollars that we needed to put into play. Assessment, excuse me, central data processing, computer assisted technology, all the things that we need to run our day-to-day operations. BOCES services, am I doing this one? I think I am. So these particular BOCES services are around the administrative costs associated with partnering with BOCES, which is different than the BOCES dollars that are spent in support of our students who attend BOCES from the high school. That, you'll see that, those dollar amounts when we speak about instruction. Okay, so these are just associated with, again, the administrative costs related to our partnership with BOCES. So I can pick these apart a little bit as well. But I'll give you, like, for example, 1240. 1240, I'm sorry. Am I in the right place? Yeah, 1240. The chief school administrator, again, we rearranged that. Right below that is 1310 business administration. Carlos, why is such a huge increase on that particular line? It's an increase of 1,817%. Oh, sorry, 1,817%. Well, that's because the system, our system Envision that manages our budget, was not coded to the business office, which is okay, right? It was coded to technology, but it was really an expense on our part, and so it really should be with us. And so those you'll see throughout as we adjust things so that we can capture correctly the dollar amounts that we're spending on activities and programs. Another may be 1622, where security of plant, that's professional development for CPI, CPR, anonymous alerts. And so again, those are security related activities, and so they need to be coupled again with the right title. It kind of gives you an idea. So last year, we provided you with like a pie chart with just numbers. So what we were trying to do is provide more transparency and say, let's break this down a little bit so that you can start looking at lines to understand the expenses within the dollar amount.
Okay, thank you. So going forward, I'm going to give you a little viewpoint of so how do we operationalize this? What are the priorities for the support areas of our operations? One of our priorities going forward is to bring a proposition before the voters. And so the first proposition that the voters will see when we get there will be the budget, right? That's the first thing that everyone will vote on. The second proposition that we'd like to bring before the voters is one to utilize our capital reserve. Several years ago, during Hurricane Ida, yes, okay, our pool at the high school had flooding and was unable to be used, and so our teams are having to use alternate facilities. Originally, the cost of repairing that pool was thought to be covered by FEMA or additional dollars coming in. Since it has been several years since we started the process of approval, the cost of repairing that pool has increased while we're waiting for approvals from different agencies. So we would like to utilize our capital reserve, which is savings that the district already has on hand, in order to get the pool renovated and up and running so that the community can use it again. We also have a number of projects across the district that we would like to be able to complete, which I'll get into in just a moment. But what's important to share is the utilization of our capital reserve is something that we must request that the voters allow us to do, but it doesn't require any additional taxes, any additional levy, no additional cost to the taxpayer. It's money that we currently have on hand. So the next couple of slides, and it's a little small, but I know it's in the printed packet, is a list of those priorities that were requested across the district by our buildings, our departments, in terms of different renovation type projects that are needed at each individual area. And so you will see an alphabetized list by building. It goes across every school building and department. Some examples of work that we're looking to do is, bleachers for a practice field in athletics, some flooring in different areas. We also have some additional cameras that we'd like to have installed. And so this particular list, this first page starts with Albert Leonard and ends with Isaac. The second page starts with Jefferson and ends with PE. And so again, there's some ventilation requests, a kiln at Albert Leonard, different renovations to classrooms that are needed to improve the instructional areas, and also tennis court resurfacing. So these priorities came in across the district. And the last page starts with pupil personnel services and then ends with some district-wide work. There's some painting, again, additional cameras or swipe systems so that people are able to get into different doors, ceiling tiles, paint, and things of that nature. So, and in addition, various technology upgrades that we would like to be able to do throughout the district. So that second proposition, if you will, would be to utilize our capital reserve to fund the renovation or rehabbing of our pool and also district-wide capital projects. The third proposition that we would like to go before the voters for is to establish a new capital reserve. So once you establish a capital reserve and you have permission to spend it, you really don't have authorization to refund it, or fund it again, if that makes sense. So once we utilize the $10 million in the capital reserve that we currently have, we need to have an opportunity to put additional savings in if they become available. And so one good example of what's in our capital reserve currently, or how it was funded, is with the use of fair mitigation dollars. And so I know that there are agreements with the city and with the developers about that revenue stream continuing into the years ahead. And so in order to have a place to sort of store those funds, we are asking the voters to allow us to establish another capital reserve. So that $50 million does not mean we're funding $50 million. It just means that's a placeholder for future projects that we will need to do. So what's important to note is that there are no additional taxes associated with this particular proposition. It will truly come from either fair mitigation dollars in the future or future savings that the district is able to realize. And if we don't have an additional capital reserve in order to put funds into, if we do get fair mitigation dollars, we will not have a repository or a place to store those dollars. And so that's why it's important that we're coming before the voters to establish a new capital reserve going forward. And this will be for a 20-year period and up to $50 million. That will be over time. It will not happen in a year or 2 years or 5 years. And so looking ahead, we have several budget workshops that are scheduled. The next one is on Tuesday. And so we will be discussing instructional programming going forward. I think the first group for the next sort of phase of the budget presentations will be student support services, I believe guidance. So we will start there for our next presentation, and on the following one, we'll have a curriculum instruction and research and assessment and other departments also being discussed. Again, budget adoption is scheduled to occur by the board on the March 21st agenda. The vote for BOCES budget, which Mr. Leal briefly spoke about the BOCES budget for our support services, but there's also a BOCES budget associated with our instruction. And so that will also be discussed at a future presentation. Budget hearing is scheduled for May 7th, and then the annual meeting, trustee vote, trustee election and budget vote rather, is scheduled for May 21st. And so having said that, I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Leo.
Thank you, Joy. And we continue to ask for feedback on this. It sounds like a lot. It is a lot. Doesn't just sound like it is a lot. And so it is important that your voice be heard, and so we ask and encourage you to please engage in this community conversation. So again, our board presentations we continue engaging our administrators in conversation. We keep going back and forth, and we want to continue our budget review sessions, our budget hearing, and then community meetings. And so those are beginning to be scheduled with PTAs, and so that we can sit together on Zoom and continue the conversation in a more intimate setting. So again, please email the board. You can email 2425 budget questions, and of course attend, and we will be here to answer questions. So that being said, if there are questions from the board, we'd be happy to answer.
Do any of my colleagues have any questions, comments? Ms. Brooks?
I think just two things. I want to acknowledge that this is going to be a difficult budget season, and I really appreciate both of your hard work as well as the rest of the team to get us through that. And we can do hard things together and make hard decisions, and so I really appreciate that, but I just want to acknowledge that reality. And we're not the only school district in Westchester or in the nation facing the same issue. So I just want to also underline that point, that although some of the tough choices we'll have to make will feel very hard and exceptional, but actually I can say, having spoken to my colleagues at the Westchester Putnam School Board Association, that every single district is facing these same tough decisions, and thank you for being our leaders through this. And in that vein also, thank you for the commitment to transparency and the willingness to break this into bite-sized pieces. Oftentimes, I mean, I'll speak for myself, at whatever, 9 o'clock at night, your eyes glaze over looking at a lot of numbers. And so I think the fact that this was, 4 or 5 slides that were deep and numbers based, but not 10 or 15, is deeply appreciated. I see my board colleagues nodding as well. So I appreciate your attention to pedagogy, even in this work. And I know, Mr. Leal, as a former educator, this comes natural to you, but Ms. Mike is also stepping right up there and teaching us and guiding us through this. So thank you both for that. And we're going to get through a good and have a nice, I don't mean nice, but a budget that really meets as many of the needs of our schools and our community as we can, even in this tough situation. So thank you both.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Ms. Williams?
Thank you for the budget presentation. This is not easy. And the 20% increase, can you just talk about that a little bit more? And is it possible to, liability and other insurance rate increases by 20%. Are there options for a lower percentage, or what's the reason for the 20%?
In terms of options, well, why? Again, because remember, we are part of NYSER, so our New York State Insurance Reciprocal, so they have indicated to us that it's an increase in insurance. So every organization, every district we've spoken to is feeling the same crunch. The number of rainstorms, and I don't want to get into a whole issue around climate change, but that is actually impacting how insurance folks are responding to their clients. So we have it, and so regionally here, because we are on the Sound, and the impact on Westchester County, Putnam, and Rockland, the three of us are all experiencing an increase of 20% on our insurances. Now, in terms of what are our options, so we have actually partnered and said, hey, can we find other partners, for example, to support us in finding better coverage, to offset where they can't assist us, like our cyber insurance, for example. Like, we got to make sure that we have that in place. I want to say it was about a month or 2 months ago in Long Island, one of the schools actually was like ransomed or something to that effect. Anastasia, you probably have the right wording for that. But we have, and we're creating a safety nets for ourselves. And when we do that, we're seeking the right coverage at a good price because we're able to negotiate that. So any chance we get, we're trying to find the right coverage at the right price.
If I may add to that, so I'll give some minor examples, and that was a very good one. So, you know, the cyber attacks that occur currently, when a school district is held hostage via cyber ransom, most of the school districts have no way of any recourse other than to pay the ransom. And that's actually what you're being told to do. So the simple steps of something as simple and I'm going to say as problematic for our practitioners as changing the process for seeking approval for having trips approved, right? We just had this conversation. We're going through a whole conversation with our schools and our administrators now in the trip approval process. Making sure that we have enough information in a timely manner that when we are audited by somebody who's going to provide us coverage and they see how many steps we have in place to ensure the security and safety of our students as well as our teachers and any chaperones we may have, that will help us to gain better insurance rates. So every little thing that we're doing within the organization that might seem to be more red tape added to our daily practices is actually being done in a thoughtful and methodical manner in order for us to get a better insurance rating. So we're taking small incremental steps.
Thank you.
Seeing no more comments or questions. Oh, wait, never mind. Ms. Castellano.
I did just want to go back to the theme that Dr. Reynolds mentioned when reflecting on the Columbus presentation about accountability, and just acknowledge how much I appreciate that you are making sure that every single penny in this district is being coded correctly, and how important that is for our citizens, for our taxpayers, for our board members, as you're responsible for the budget of our district and making sure that the spending is spent correctly in the right code, in the right function, in the correct budget line. That's really important. And that also holds us accountable in making sure that our money is spent where it is supposed to be spent in the service of students in this district. So I do appreciate it, and I'm glad that we are able to see the difference between year to year under each code. And so I just wanted to note how much I do appreciate that. You know, it's taken years as a board member to really wrap my head around that, and I'm even in this field. So I do really feel that the way that you have broken it down and made it palatable and understandable for us is really appreciated. Thank you.
Great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Colleagues, we can go back to our seats to finish the meeting. The last two discussion items we have are two first readings of policies that are, an update was required from NYSBA, New York State School Boards Association. Colleagues, if you had the chance to look over the edits, does anyone have any questions or comments about it?
Just want to make a comment. Dates and edits. We took into account school law. We worked um, with our council and our superintendent, and particularly like the policy for homeless children. It's devastating to be homeless, not or be unhoused. And what we did is we took the recommendations from NYSBA, and we spoke to council and our superintendent, and we're ensuring that our homeless children are getting everything that is due to them under the law. And we are also making sure that we're making sure that we are determining their eligibility, and that we have the appropriate paperwork, and we're making sure that we're following the law, and we're not adding to the hardship that our children are feeling already by virtue of being homeless.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we can move on to committees and liaison reports. Do any of my colleagues have any liaison or school buddy reports? Ms. Bavosa.
Bear with me one moment while I pull that up. As a board member representative on the Rescue Safety Committee, the topic of discussion at the last meeting was the fire inspection report. We had our annual fire inspections done during November and December, and all of our school buildings did very well. All of the buildings received their C of O as of January 1st. The annual fire inspection runs on an 11-month cycle, so we'll be starting the next one in mid-October for December 1st. This school district has made great improvements with the fire inspections and the lack of violations that we have received over the last few years. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 20th at 2 p.m. in the Carew Room, and members of the community who would like to attend are most welcome. The Fund for Educational Excellence. The Funds Gala was very successful. We received enough donations, aside from the actual funding from the gala, to secure a matching grant, and we will be starting to roll out free chess instructions to second and third graders starting this spring in a limited capacity, with a wider effort throughout the district starting next fall. Also, our ACT, SAT prep classes are underway and at most full capacity. Very limited spots are left. Juniors should register as soon as possible if interested. The only SAT class that has room now is on Tuesday afternoon from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. The others are sold out. Also, Oxford University, Out of the Blue a cappella group, will be performing at New Rochelle High School on Friday, March 22nd at 7:30 p.m. Anyone who's interested in either that performance, the Fund for Educational Excellence information, or any information in regard to the ACT, SAT program, can go on to the New Rochelle Fund website to get further information. I'm really pleased to have been a board member on these committees because I've seen the extraordinary work that's been done by the members on these boards, all volunteers who are coming out of their own time, whether it's teachers, administrators, or community members who are trying to upgrade everything in our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bavosa. Mr. Iannuzzi had to step away. I'm taking over. Any other liaison or school buddy reports?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Ms. Williams.
Okay, thank you. I'm the co-chair of the policy committee, and my other co-chair was David Peters, who has gone on to be a city council member for New Rochelle. And so my new co-chair is Mrs. Roshni Ross, and she was a member of the policy committee. Now she is part of the policy committee leadership, and I would like to welcome her. Thank you.
Ms. Ross.
Thank you. I do feel welcome with my big binder right here. Makes me feel very welcome. I also just wanted to have a quick shout out. I actually just forgot earlier in the meeting to the Webster PTA and their committee, Black History Month committee. They had an amazing presentation a couple weeks ago, and I now have been part of that school community for 7 years. I think it was one of the best that I've been to. And they brought in some outside performers. I think it was called Elite Steppers for young ladies. And then they brought in a marching band that performs in the style of historically Black colleges, which was just amazing. And it just made me think about how many amazing resources there are outside of our schools. And that as a district, how do we just take advantage of those more so? So even if there are things that we're not offering, how do we just make sure that our students have access? Because there's so many amazing things that are out there. So that's it. Thank you.
This will be very quick, just for my board, less for the public, but the Westchester School Board Association also has another training coming up for budget information as we head into this budget season. One wants to attend with me.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Okay, seeing no other takers, I'm going to move us to the public comment portion of the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to convene into the public comment period of the meeting. The Board of Education adopted Policy 1230 in April 2022 to ensure all members of the public have the opportunity to speak at both of our board meetings each month. We believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues. Having said that, please note that the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, understand that the board will not respond to your concerns or questions tonight. We do, however, take your concerns and questions seriously and want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. I also want to point out that under state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel and students. Please know, however, that we take personnel concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask that you go through the appropriate administrative channels. Finally, we recognize that right now our nation and our community are polarized on a number of issues. That said, we want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we insist that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others. We ask that speakers please address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. In the unlikely event the meeting becomes unruly, the board will recess the meeting and return once order has been restored. Finally, I want to remind you that you may submit written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period if you so choose. Tonight, we have set aside 30 minutes for public comment, where each speaker who has signed up before 3:30 p.m. today has 3 minutes to speak. If a person requests to speak after 3:30 p.m., speakers may sign up in person at the meeting with the clerk and will be afforded the opportunity to speak for 2 minutes during the public comment period if time permits. And our first speaker of the night is Ms. Brenda DiGiacomo.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brenda DiGiacomo. First, I have to say, Ms. Cook, thank you for tonight. That was a wonderful performance by your class. That really touched my heart. My my father was one of the ones that attended Lincoln Attendance Zone, and they lived in the projects. But here's my speech for tonight. I have a few questions. What's going on with our children going on trips? Why am I hearing from the teachers it's so hard, there's so many applications to fill out, there's no rain dates? I mean, our kids need to be going on trips also. There's no more walking trips. Like, I feel like our kids are being deprived of a lot lately in our community, and I see a lot of other communities going on trips. Along with that, at Huguenot Academy, our students are paying for parking. I know I talked to a few people already, but I don't feel like nothing's getting done, and we're not going nowhere. Also, I feel Huguenot Academy needs a full-time nurse and not a part-time nurse. All our schools have full-time nurse. Why is Huguenot Academy not being allowed the same privileges? Also, Also, we have a part of our Green Committee, and I think it's a great program that we're doing in New Rochelle. And it's also open to our staff, family members, students, community members, and I really think that more people need to be involved in this. This is not only helping our schools, but also helping our community. We meet once a month on Wednesdays. It's great information we learn. We're also having, on May 15th, the committee will be hosting a green celebration in honor of all the work our kids have done in all our schools at the cafeteria, at Houseworth Cafeteria. I hope to see a lot of you there. Also, one last thing that really touches my heart throughout the years, I know I've been absent this year a lot, but I had a lot of medical issues, and I shouldn't even be here today, but I'm here to speak because I'm tired of speaking to the board and feel like I get nowhere. I feel like you guys say, we'll get back to you, we'll say it at another meeting, but I don't feel I ever get answers. I leave messages at City Hall, I do everything, but there's still things that went on in the past that still aren't resolved. And when are we gonna start getting back to our community members who are wasting our time speaking and getting nowhere? So I would really appreciate if you people start reaching out to us because we deserve answers just as much as you guys do. Thank you for all you do and have a great night.
Thank you, Ms. DiGiacomo. Ms. Bonilla, are there any other comments for the evening? Our next meeting is next Tuesday, March 5th at Barnard School at 6 p.m. Colleagues, can I have a motion and a second to adjourn for the evening?
So moved, Bavosa.
Second, Williams.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Have a great night, everyone.